I guess the main point I want to get across is that we can win this thing, and we can stop the tunnels. I know that some of you have been coming to meetings in this gym since 2010. That's what, 7 years now. And it seems like no matter what we do, the tunnels just keep marching forward. And the rumor circulating around and the sentiment circulating around is that it's a done deal, right? That's not true. They do keep marching forward, but it's not a done deal, and we can win. And what I want to lay out for you tonight is what we've won so far, where we are, and then what we need to do going forward. There are multiple agencies involved in this thing. There are multiple approvals that they have to get, and it all becomes very confusing, all the different permits they need and different kinds of hearings we ask you to go to and comments we ask you to send to this agency and then comments to that agency. And unfortunately, that's what we have to do to stop it. It's not a simple deal. So I want to start tonight by talking a little bit about the lawsuit that we won and the Delta Plan. So the legislature's idea on the Delta Plan was this is going to be the master plan to save the Delta and restore the ecology and make everything great again. And basically, instead of writing a plan that would do that and take care of the Delta, the people who were charged with doing this, the Delta Stewardship Council, basically made it a water grab and made it a rubber stamp to build the tunnels. And I think Jan's explanation and understanding what the tunnels are going to do, the simplest way to understand it is they're going to take the Sacramento River up near Freeport and put it in a pipe and send it to Los Angeles. And all that Sacramento River water that used to flow through Discovery Bay and into our bays and keep us fresh water isn't going to be there anymore. And we're going to be salt water and we're going to be polluted salt water. Because two things will happen. When the Sacramento River flow is gone, the bay water will come up and it'll be replaced by San Joaquin River water, which is very heavily loaded with agricultural return flow and fertilizer coming back from the Central Valley. So we need to stop this thing. The Delta Stewardship Council is having a meeting on Thursday, March 23rd in Brentwood. And I'm going to ask folks to sign up and go to that meeting and to tell the Delta Stewardship Council what's on your mind. And in order for you to be able to do that, I'm going to explain to you what they're doing right now. So that's the cover of the Delta Plan. Beautiful marsh there. And then can we have the next slide? And their current proposal that they've just come up with to promote options for new and improved infrastructure for the Delta is to construct new facilities for isolated below-ground conveyance, and that means tunnels. So that's what they're putting forward, is they're saying, what we want is we want tunnels. Next slide. No, go back. Back one. Does it go down below that?
No.
Okay, I must have missed a slide. The other thing they're doing, in addition to saying that the best way to help the Delta is to build tunnels, is they're also saying to build gates again. And so this organization was formed back in 2010 to fight gates, and now they're trying to bring the gates back. Put gates throughout the Delta to block navigation and make life difficult for us. Okay, next slide. All right. So this was the original Delta Plan that was promulgated in 2013. And in 2013, what it said was, at this time, the agencies pursuing the BDCP is the tunnels, are best positioned to develop possible options, evaluate them, and decide on the best one. For this reason, the Delta Plan does not include any regulatory policies regarding conveyance. So basically what they said was the the DWR is smarter than we are. We're just going to stand down, and whatever they come up with is good enough for us. If they say build tunnels, then we'll go along with that. And it says here, if the council ever does decide to amend the Delta plan to address conveyance, that they're going to study that very thoroughly before they make any decision about what they're going to endorse. Next slide. So we sued them, and this is a cover page of our first amended complaint. This is what we initiated the lawsuit with, and that's the date up there, October 1st, 2013. Next slide. And this is from our complaint. What we said in there is that the net result of the council's application is to convert the Delta plan into little more than a rubber stamp for the massive and controversial diversion project, inaptly known as the BDCP. In other words, it was a rubber stamp for the tunnels. Our prayer for relief, in other words, what we were asking the court to do, was we pray for relief as follows: for alternative and preemptory writs of mandate, commanding the council to set aside approval of the Delta plan and final regulations, and for a declaration that the council's action approving the Delta plan and final regulations are inconsistent with the Delta Reform Act. So they didn't follow the law. Judge, we want you to strike it down. And the reason we want you to strike it down is because they rubber stamped those tunnels, and they weren't supposed to do that. Next slide. This is the judgment in the case. If you notice, the date is November 28th, 2016. So that's about 3 years later of going to court. Then we got a judgment. And next slide. That's the center of the judgment. Next slide. There's the official court seal on there. Next slide. And what that judgment says is the first amended verified petition for writ of mandate and complaint for injunctive and declaratory relief filed on October 1st, 2013 by Save the California Delta Alliance is hereby granted. Judgment is entered in favor of Save the California Delta Alliance and against the Delta Stewardship Council. So we won. And the council couldn't believe it. They said, Your Honor, you must have made a mistake. You couldn't possibly mean that these, rubes from Discovery Bay could be right. So they filed this motion, and they styled that a motion for clarification. Your Honor, can you please clarify that you didn't really mean that? Next slide. And this is what the judge responded in his order. To be clear, the Delta plan is invalid and must be set aside until proper revisions are complete. And this is the ordering issue. This is called a peremptory writ of mandate. This is a command to the council to do something. Next slide. Next slide. Next one. And this is what he ordered them to do. These 4 things provide a flow policy that includes quantified or otherwise measurable targets. In other words, give us a number of how much flow you're going to leave in the delta. This is to quantify or measurable targets associated with achieving reduced delta reliance. That means tell us how much less water are you going to export every year so we can save the delta. And it also says, let's see, next slide. Go back.
Hey, Michael?
Yeah.
Could you move the microphone on the other side away from that speaker? It's not doing that.
Okay. Thank you. There's a line missing from the slide there. The other part of the command that the judge issued is that they should promote options for conveyance, that they shouldn't stand down to the BDCP and just rubber stamp tunnels. And those were the words that the judge used, promote options for conveyance. Next slide. And so this is now their response that they just came out with a few days ago. We, the Delta Council, hereby promote options for new and improved infrastructure by constructing new facilities for isolated below-ground conveyance. Am I missing something here? I mean, what have we been doing for the last 3 years? Next slide. And furthermore, they should pursue installation of permanent operable gates or barriers in the South Delta. Now, I don't know where that came from. I think that was just spite. I think it's just vindictive, but it aimed at us. So here's the process that we need to stop the tunnels. The first thing is the appeal and cross appeal, which are underway. Obviously, the Delta Stewardship Council has appealed that decision of the court that I just showed you, and that's going up to the California Court of Appeals. We also filed a cross appeal just for fun, because if they're going to object to what they were told to do, we'll ask the court to tell them to do even more. The second thing is that hearings at the State Water Resources Control Board are underway. So now we got a completely different agency with a different permit, which is a water rights permit to move the point of diversion where they take water from the Delta. Instead of drawing it out where they do now at Clifton Court Forebay, they'll draw it out up near Hood and put it in the tunnels. We have been participating in those hearings, and I'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. And we need to continue with those hearings at the State Water Resources Control Board. We also need to file lawsuit number 2, which is going to be a challenge to their environmental impact report. There's a very short statute of limitations when you're challenging environmental impact reports. So that lawsuit has to be filed within 30 days of when the Department of Water Resources certifies the EIR. I would expect that to be in May or June. Then there's going to be lawsuit number 3, which is a challenge to the biological opinion that will be issued by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, yet another agency, that will say it's okay to build the tunnels if you quote-unquote adaptively manage them and pay very close attention and make sure you don't harm any wildlife, right? After you build it, you'll figure out how to run it. And lawsuit number 4 is going to be a challenge to the Army Corps of Engineers, who's going to grant them permits to dredge and fill. They need to dredge and fill where the intakes are and other construction. That'll probably be this summer. Next slide. And then number 6, DWR is going to have to issue what's called a certification of consistency, saying that the tunnel project is consistent with the Delta plan. And that brings us back to the Delta Stewardship Council. And we have to go in front of the Delta Stewardship Council and say, number 1, you have no plan. Remember, the court invalidated your plan. And number 2, the tunnels aren't consistent with the Delta Reform Act. So we have to participate in that administrative process. And then after the council ignores us and goes ahead and approves the tunnel, then we have to file lawsuit number 5 challenging their certification that the tunnels are consistent with the Delta Reform Act. Lawsuit number 6, we're participating in the hearings on the State Water Resources Control Board. We need to sue them to challenge their issuance of the water rights permits to move the point of diversion. And then lawsuit number 7 is to challenge the Army Corps of Engineers permit for dredge and fill, which I mentioned earlier. That's under Section 401 of the Clean Water Act. And a challenge to the Army Corps' issuance of a permit under the Rivers and Harbors Act, because the tunnels, as they're being constructed, are going to obstruct navigation, as Jan was